Welcome to this edition of Inside Look. Today, I'm joined by Scott Smith of Big Red Lacrosse. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Now, first of all, tell me a little bit about yourself.
My name's Scott Smith. I've been in town about 10 years now. I'm part of the RTM, and when we were looking to start a lacrosse program here, I was probably the third or fourth most qualified person in town because I went to a school that played lacrosse in college. Not that I played, but the school had a team, so that made me third or fourth most qualified.
Now, how big has lacrosse become?
It's one of the fastest growing sports in America right now. It's growing off a small base, but for instance, here in North Attleboro, we started our program 7 years ago.
Wow.
We're averaging about 300 kids a year coming. It's about equally split between boys and girls, so it's really coming to its own here. And it's, our biggest challenge is getting enough fields to get our kids on out there on a regular basis.
When you first started, what was the number of kids involved?
It was lower then. It was about 200. We had a lot of kids.
Even still that high, though.
We had some pent-up demand, and we had some kids that were playing in what was called the Tri-Borough League. It was an Attleboro-based league, league. But we started becoming more and more a greater population of the Attleboro taking over Attleboro fields, and they were like, hey, it would be great if we can get our kids on our fields. So they kind of suggested that we might be looking into start our own program so we can get our North kids playing on North fields to free them up for Attleboro kids.
Now, do you have children?
I do. I have a boy who has just entered his freshman year at the high school and a girl who's in 7th grade. They both played for 7 years already. My son is now out of the program because he's going to hopefully play for Coach Young at the high school. But he did his darndest to get there. My daughter has 2 more years left in the program before she moves on to the high school program.
So they've all been involved within that same program?
It's been a family affair. Once basically April 1st comes, we are busy 5 or 6 nights a week all over southeastern Massachusetts, either with practices or games, yeah.
Now, what makes Big Red Lacrosse unique? Like, the program in itself?
Right. I think one of the biggest things here is keeping the kids moving at all times. And in lacrosse, the more repetitions you get, the better off you're going to be. So our goal is to have practices that are fun, energetic, and keeping the kids moving as best they can. Rather than having standing in lines, we'd rather having running around. So that's what we're really looking to do. Some of the sports we looked at, it's all about getting set and then waiting a lot. We found that the more we can keep them moving, the better off it's going to be. So it's one of those high energy things. And my goal is when I send your kids back from practice, I want them to sleep like logs that night because we ran them as hard as we could.
I bet the parents appreciate that.
As best we can, yeah. It sometimes gets out of hand, and sometimes they just seem dead tired. But there's a lot of running in the game, so we have to try and put that into practice as well. Most sports do have a lot of running, but ours is particular in that it's it's the length of a football field, and you can go from end to end, back and forth a few times, just in a few plays. So it really is important to have that aerobic capacity.
Not only that, but the eye-hand coordination that
Exactly.
must go into it. How hard is that to teach?
That's our biggest challenge, right? Basically it comes down to catching and throwing the ball and being able to run. And it's a sport where a lot of kids haven't grown up with that. If you grow up playing sports, you have a basketball in your hand, maybe you have a hockey stick, maybe you've played some baseball, but this is the first time most kids are touching it. But they pick it up pretty quickly. We had an open house, I think 2 Saturdays ago over at AmVet, and we had about 25 or 30 kids show up on, between, I think it was 9 and noon. And I got, as soon as they showed up, I'd take them out, put a stick in their hand and get them out with my son playing catch. And by the end of the day, out of the 25 kids we had there, probably 22 or 23 of them picked it up pretty quickly. A couple of them were a little slower, but, they could come along with a couple more reps. We're only doing it for 20 minutes, but, getting that in their hand, it's something new they learn. It's something they've never seen before, and it really is exciting to them to have like a new thing to conquer.
Well, something interesting too is, I see, them twisting it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not you just hold it there and catch it.
Correct.
What is the reason for that?
Well, it's when they're running down the field, keeping the ball in a stick kind of requires you to cradle it.
Okay.
And you see the boys' stick is got a deeper pocket on it. That's because in the boys' game there's a little more whacking of the stick, more checking with the sticks. The girls have a slightly less deep one, so they have this. That's how hard it is, right? They also have to cradle as well, but they don't really make as much stick contact. So that's where the difference comes in. But when you're running at speed, keeping it in there requires it to be cradled to keep it from falling out while they're running.
Now, there's also different lengths.
Correct. These are the standard attack sticks or the midfielder sticks. The defensemen on the boys' side have a stick that's up to 6 feet long.
Wow.
You really get out there and get someone pushing them around and trying to control them a little bit. Even with the long sticks like that, scores can be like 14, 15 goals per game. So it's still, the offense still has a pretty good advantage, even on the boys' side, at the older ages, they use those long sticks.
Now, just mentioning the difference in the games and, the hitting and everything, would you like to see, more impact, more aggressiveness and being able to hit in the girls' game?
No, I think it's a good mix right now. The younger girls, grades 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, it's really no contact whatsoever. But my daughter is quite aggressive in her 5th and 6th grade team, and it's a little bit, it grades up a little bit more where there's some pushing. It's more like in basketball where there's picks and stuff like that when you're making solid contact instead of like the more aggressive hitting in the boys' game. I think they're both very athletic, and I think that they're taking advantage of their skill sets. On the boys' side, it's gone away from aggressiveness. It's a lot like football, where football they used to have those highlight shows of the biggest hits of the week and stuff like that. But they made it a point of emphasis on the boys' lacrosse side to get away from those aggressive hits, so that concussions were becoming a problem. They made sure that they moved away from that, made a point of emphasis with the referees to make sure that that's not what you're focused on when you're hitting someone. It's to dislodge the ball, not to dislodge their head.
Now, I'm watching this, and as a parent or as a child, when can I actually start to play in Big Red Lacrosse?
Sure. We advertise it as first grade, but we've had kindergartners come on if they're excited to do so.
As young as that?
Yeah, my daughter started playing, she played 3 years in the grade 1-2 program because she started in kindergarten. So it's, if they're interested in it and they want to get out there, by all means, the more time you have a stick in your hand, the better off you're going to be long term. So we encourage it.
Where do you guys usually play? You mentioned fields and the Triborough.
Yep.
But where's kind of your home base?
Our home base is at the high school right now. When we started 7 years ago, we were over at at Petty Field down behind the ski slope there. Yeah. We started over there, and then that turned into a softball field, so we shuffled off to Rice Field. Once the turf opened up last year, we found a good home there for a bulk of our practices. Now most of our stuff's at the high school between the field over by the tennis courts, one of the lower fields down below, and up on the turf. So we share that with the soccer program in the spring. It's worked out great for us. That's one of the big points of emphasis, though, is that we look back to last April. Maybe you'll recall there was about 22 days of rain last April.
Yep.
If we didn't have access to the turf, we couldn't get out there, right? We had some games and practices that were scheduled for the grass fields there, but you're looking at 6 inches deep of water in many cases, and for that, after it rains 5 days in a row, it could take 5 more days to dry out. So the turf was a real godsend for us, to get anything done last year, and even then we had to cancel some stuff when you have, it's 40 degrees and raining. It might deter the kids' long-term love of the sport if they only get used to playing in 40-degree rain. So even with the cancellations we did have, we were able to get on a lot of the stuff just because we did have access to the turf. So it's a real breakthrough for us there.
Well, you mentioned that, and I was going to say, how great is that for a transition for the kids that are going to play in high school to get used to the turf field?
Yeah, it's great exposure there too, right? When we started playing, it was on, we were glad to have access to the fields we had, but they were beat up a little bit, right? And lacrosse is a little bit tough on these things because there's kids, running around with big cleats, and they're all kind of right in front of the net, so there'd be these bright brown patches in the front there. It's kind of a totally different game. It's so much faster on like the turf-like carpet where you're scooping and running. So they're both important parts because you're going to play on both kind of fields as you grow up. But having that, makes us a little less jealous of our competitors. So a town like Medway that has like 3 turf fields at the high school or something like that.
Now, who do you play? Who's involved? What teams?
Sure. So it's most of the communities locally here, right? Mansfield has a program, Attleboro, Franklin, so kind of all of our surrounding communities. So we have this, what's called our classic program, which is basically the regular team, right? And we have 2 to 3 teams at each age group at grades 1, 2, grades 3, 4.
Wow.
So it's pretty big like that. And we'll, on a Sunday afternoon or Sunday mornings and afternoons, we'll have those kind of classic games where everyone plays local towns. Maybe you go 30 miles away. Maybe like Northborough is probably the farthest we go for that. At the higher level, at grades 5 and 6 and 7, 8, we have these select teams, which are kind of like all-star teams for the town. And we'll travel a little bit farther there to get higher level competition where we're trying to play. It's for those kids who are really looking to play in high school or the next level. We started doing that about 6 years ago. We had some building success there. Last year, our boys select team at the U15 program actually won the state championships.
Wow.
It was the highlight of my coaching career. I was like the assistant to the assistant coach, and I figured I could retire after that. But our our former president, Carl Faust, moved out of town, which made me the president in waiting, if you will. So instead of retiring, I had to become the president of the league.
Now, how has that been for you?
It's great. You know, it's something I've been involved in for 7 years already. With my son moving out of moving out of the system and into the high school program, I didn't have a lot to do anymore because I wasn't coaching his program, and I didn't feel like transitioning to the girls' game with my daughter having 2 years left was probably the right thing for me. But now I'm able to help out, any team on the boys' side or the girls' side, as well as kind of doing exciting opportunities like this.
So it's kind of a passion of yours, even though you didn't play.
Yeah, it's contributing to our town, right? And I think that's important for everybody to step up and do their things, right? Everyone's got to take their opportunity to make it better, and if I can help out, the town and the children this way, great. That's the role I've chosen to take because no one else was there to do it, and I think everybody has to have that responsibility as part of them, right? What are you doing to make this town a better place? And this is my little part.
Now, if your children didn't play, do you think you'd still be involved?
I would tend to doubt it. There's only so many hours in a day for all of us, and it's not purely a selfish activity. I do,
especially working in Boston.
Yeah, I work in Boston. I can keep my day busy enough, and if we weren't involved, I probably would step away. I probably will step away in 2 years when my daughter graduates into the high school program. But I think it's everyone important. If you want your kids to have something going for them, it's your opportunity to help out too, and I think everyone's got to do that.
And it must be exciting to see the kids grow, like children you've
Absolutely.
met. It must be great to see where they go if they play in college, things like that. How many have moved further?
We have had some kids up in the college from the earlier years of our program. The youngest kids I know are now freshmen in high school, and they've come so far, right?
Wow.
When I met them, they weren't as tall as this desk, right? And they could barely pick up a ball or throw it. Now I see kids going into the high school program. Those kids that I started with 7 years ago winning that championship last year. It was I couldn't imagine that from the place we started at. I think the first year we played 7 years ago, we were, our teams are 0-9, 1-8. We just never played before.
Yeah.
And the same kids stuck together for so long, got better and better and better. These kids have played multiple sports across town. They're good athletes, but they had never picked up a stick before. And with 7 years of repetitions, they were able to get there. And I think that's what we've seen across the board. There's just this incremental improvement that can just happen by getting them out there and making them have fun. And I think that's the real opportunity here, is giving them an athletic activity where they can have fun. Professional lacrosse isn't a big money sport. I think there's like half a dozen guys who make 6-figure money, but the rest of them are kind of doing it for the love of the game. And I think that's what we're doing here, is to give them something exciting they can bond with their friends over and get outside. Back when we were kids, right?
Yeah.
We went outside, played pickup basketball or whatever else it is. You don't see a ton of that anymore. And if we can give them more opportunities to get out there and have an organized activity, and it's one that they can do at home too, right? With the 7 years that we've been playing, I started off with my kids in the basement, throwing it against the wall, and this term wall ball is something that lacrosse players are encouraged to do. Even professionals are doing that every day, because getting those reps is just so important. If they don't do it on a daily basis, their skills kind of get rusty. And just reminding people of that, is that the basics are fundamental and important. It's something you can do every day, just to have an activity to do. And I think getting people out there and getting them active is what we're really all about, making sure they're having fun.
Well, I think also with lacrosse, it seems to be a sport that's affordable.
It is. There's a pretty low entry cost. On the girls' side, it's basically just a stick and a pair of goggles and a mouthpiece. So you're probably looking at under $100 in total equipment.
Wow.
And that could last for a few years. On the boys' side, there's a helmet, there's some more equipment.
The pads,
right.
yeah. But
there's entry-level packages around $150 to $200. So you're almost always on sale at some point in one of the online retailers or local retailers. So you can get going for, $200 worth of equipment for 3 or 4 years. I think my son wore his for 4 years at, the entry-level equipment. And the cost to play per year is under $300. And that's, we start in January with these kind of skills and drill sessions, we call them, at a local indoor facility over in Taunton, the Four Kicks facility. And we have that every Sunday, basically from January until late March. And then we start our actual season. It's beginning the last week of March, or early April, and it goes through June. So they're getting a lot of touches. They're getting a lot of exposure here for, $300.
That's awesome. Because I know, for instance, I played softball.
Sure.
And one bat would be over $300.
It could be, sure. And you can get fancier too, but the there's not always a great return on investment when you get the fancier equipment, right? It's really about how much you practice and how much you try and all those kind of things too. But my son is definitely scouting out for a new helmet and a new stick, and he's told me his budget is $300. So I've told him he better win the scholarship contest.
And I was going to say, not my bat didn't help me by being expensive. I had to help myself.
Exactly. So it gives you a little
100% correct.
motivation there too. Definitely.
Now, do you guys have a website or a
Yep.
Facebook page?
Sure,
or something?
absolutely. We have all that stuff. NABigRedLAX.com. It's pretty straightforward. To get there, we have all information about our registrations open right now. Again, we start in the beginning of January. The tryouts for those select teams we talked about, it's scheduled probably the first week of December for those kids that are returning in the 5th, 6th, and 7th and 8th grade areas. We also do have the website. If you go to if you search for NA Big Red LAX on Facebook, you can find that as well. So NABigRedLAX.com. If anybody has any questions for me, I can be reached at president@NABigRedLAX.com anytime, and be glad to help anybody through the process.
Makes you sound really important.
You know, I'm the president of something, not even my own house, but lacrosse program.
No, I think what you do is wonderful, and I think a lot of people don't realize it's right in their backyard
Sure.
that they can get involved with this.
Yeah.
And I would love to see your program grow to 500.
If we had enough field space for it, I'd take it too. But it's our biggest challenge is really getting the volunteers out there, right? It's getting the coaches, getting the parents out there. We had great success having people come into the program before. Now we're all the kind of the board members are all kind of aging out of the program as their children get older. So we're always looking for that new blood to come in. It's tough for parents who have never played the sport themselves, to go in at a grade 1, 2 level and be coaches or assistant coaches. But everybody's starting on an equal playing field there. There's not a lot of experienced college players with kids coming into the program. There's a few, and we welcome into our coaching ranks too. But if your hand-eye coordination is at least average, and you're willing to get out there and throw it around with the kids, by all means, we'd love to have those people come on as coaches. Especially when their kids are younger, so we can build them into the program. I'd never picked up a stick. I'd recreationally picked up a stick myself, and there's plenty of coaches who had never touched a stick before. It's really just about enthusiasm, getting out there and helping the kids.
Have you improved yourself over the 7 years?
I am a talented player at this point for a person who's never played,
Really?
organized play. I'll give myself plenty of credit. I can compete with my U15 boys, but now they're getting faster than me. I think it was about age 13 where they started passing me by on a pure speed basis, but I still rely on my savvy a little bit.
And it's kind of a finesse game, isn't it?
It's a combination. Players can succeed in any way, right? There's players who win on power. There's those who win on speed. There's they can also succeed through just kind of game savvy. It's all making there's different positions and different elements where anyone can succeed as long as they're doing the thing that applies to them, right? The guys who can run fast, the girls who can run fast, play midfield, and they can run literally up and down the field and take advantage of everything. But if somebody with some crafty stick moves down in front of them can score dozens of goals just by being in the right place at the right time and catching and throwing quickly, they could run less than 100 yards the whole game as long as they're kind of being aware with their stick and getting in the right position. So I could say that anyone could succeed. For people who don't like to run as much, potentially goalie's an option for them too. So there's plenty of options for everybody, and we can make anything work as long as they're willing to come up with enthusiasm.
And I bet the high school program is grateful to have the program you guys do.
Definitely.
To help get them prepared for that level.
Oh, absolutely. We've been working with both the coaches in the girls program and the boys program to try and make sure we're kind of aligning our goals and making sure that we're playing in the same general style and using some of the same terminology too. You don't want to have the kids to relearn the entire vocabulary after playing one way for 7 years. So we interface with them regularly and try and make sure that they're we're emphasizing the same skills that they're looking for at the high school level, because ultimately we want them to succeed as they move forward.
It's a great feeder program.
Absolutely. I think they're running varsity and JV teams in those programs now, and they have no lack of kids to run them now because we're graduating by 20 to 40 a year, depending on the grade.
I've heard of kids. My boss's daughter's friend Jenny Thorpe.
Sure.
Took it up her senior year.
Yep. Yeah, and that's It's surprising in some degree, but natural athletes can kind of do anything. There's been some stories of professional players who did the same thing. One of the guys in the Red Sox was not Red Sox. One of the guys in the Patriots, wide receivers, the last couple of years was actually a All-American lacrosse player at Penn State before he flipped back to football when he didn't, think there was a great career for him in lacrosse. So, if somebody's athletic, they can pick it up in no time. We had one of the boys join my program. I think he was probably 12 or 13 years old. The other kids have been playing 4 or 5 years. He hopped into the program. He was a natural athlete. He was one of the fastest kids on the field. Before you know it, he was scoring more than his fair share of goals.
That's amazing. And that must make you proud, though.
It does. The hours we put in, getting dirty, getting mud soaked and rain soaked, it all pays off when you see the smile on their faces after a great game.
I think that's something that people forget. It's a sport that's still played in the rain.
Absolutely, and more so than I would like to admit. A couple times, unless there's lightning striking or we can't get through it, we try and stay out there. Some of those I may have regretted a little bit when we looked back at the field and it was this deep by the time we walked out. But it was a memorable game when we had to basically put down some cones and say, you know what, let's not go over there. If the ball goes over there, let's just say that's out of bounds. But it was a wet and wild Sunday afternoon, I think, against Attleboro one time over at the high school, and we may have want to rethink that in future opportunities.
But it's fun for the kids.
Oh, they loved it. Nothing's better than that. Sliding across the ground, making big splashes. They didn't regret it at all. I think the parents had more of an issue with it.
That was my favorite when it would rain on the softball field. That would be practice sliding day.
Yeah.
And it was perfect.
Plenty of low friction and no one's knees got ripped up. Certainly.
I don't think my parents enjoyed it when I came home with the muddy
12 rounds of laundry.
Yeah, I don't think they were happy.
It's okay. We have our uniforms for like 2 or 3 years, then we refresh them because we realize that it's not going to make it through. And they're largely acrylic and you can wash them out pretty tight.
Now, for people who are watching, is there something we haven't mentioned, whether it be about yourself, the program?
No, I think we've covered most of the basics here. I think the important part is that anyone can do it. We're going to have another kind of get to learn to play lacrosse session probably in the upcoming weeks, or probably another one in January when we do start that indoor field time. So if anybody is interested in that, again, you can contact me at president@bigredlax.com or look on the website or follow our Facebook page. We're going to be pushing on that to make sure that people are aware of the opportunities. Like I said, we had 25 kids at that open house and it was amazing.
That's amazing.
Most of them hadn't touched a stick before, and the quickness with which they pick it up is really fascinating. And they really seem to enjoy it. So I think that's what we're looking for, is just making kids smile.
Well, now you've got to start like a 30 and over lacrosse league so you can play.
Some of those exist, but I don't quite have the wheels for it yet. So I can excel against 11-year-olds, but I don't know about 40-year-olds who played in college. Probably a little bit beyond my speed.
Well, you never know.
Again, I might just be crafty enough.
You may surprise yourself.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, Scott, a pleasure.
Great. It was a pleasure being here.
Congratulations on such growth with Big Red Lacrosse. It's great.
Great.
And good luck to your children this up and coming year.
They'll be excelling at all levels, I hope. Thank you very much.
And we thank you for watching this edition of Inside Look. We hope to see you on the lacrosse field.